There we go. All right, now we'll make it bigger, and we're all set.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, good. We can
Excellent.
really see you now.
All right.
And can you hear me okay?
Yes. Very
I've got my headphones and a microphone,
Oh,
so okay,
wonderful.
good. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, so I'm Nadine Shank on the piano faculty, professor.
Hello, Nadine.
Hi.
I'm Bill Height, voice.
I'm Brent Auerbach. I'm graduate program director. I'm also associate professor of music theory.
Theory, great. Terrific, thank you. And I'm Scott Lipscomb.
Nice to meet you.
We knew that. So we envisioned this conversation lasting 30, maybe 40 minutes.
Okay,
And built into that is time for you to ask us questions.
great.
But of course, that's at the end.
That's-
So the first thing is, I'd like to ask you what attracted you to this position?
Yeah, I am a strong advocate and hard worker when it comes to the accreditation process, and so I know of your work through associations with going to the NASM conference, and it's a highly respected institution. It's the flagship of Massachusetts. I happen to be at the flagship here in Minneapolis, and so that's very attractive. And I'll tell you that there's also the faculty accomplishments, student accomplishments are just incredibly impressive as I've reviewed as much information as I could gather online, but also have some really close connections with, there's a group called NAMASU, the National Association of Music Executives at State Universities, and your chair has been going to those meetings as well. So I've had a chance to get to know a number of people from across the country, and it's just so clear that there's an amazing institution. I love the 5 colleges idea as I studied different things on the website, and I'll tell you that there's a real attraction to the Pioneer Valley kind of environment, this cultural mecca. I think the same things about the Twin Cities, and one of the things that's really been a passion of mine, I think I've been most successful at, is making direct connections to arts organizations, forming partnerships, really making a significant difference in the lives of the community surrounding the institution, and not just the Twin Cities, but into what we call Greater Minnesota. We used to call it Outstate, and they didn't like that, so Greater Minnesota. But the way that we really can positively impact the community as faculty members, but perhaps most importantly, plant that seed for our students, the importance of understanding entrepreneurial activity, knowing how to make those networking connections, and providing opportunities. Here's the crucial part: providing opportunities within the curriculum where they can actually exercise those skills. And so in the period of time they spend with us in the institution, they not only learn marvelous performance technique, they not only get a theory and ear training, history background, ensemble experiences, etc., but they really learn what they can do when they get out of school to be successful in making a living as a musician, whatever that looks like, given it's the 21st century.
Can I follow that up? Just to ask, do you find that sort of real-world experience, do you have models for that to work at the undergraduate level, the graduate level, or both?
Both. And do you want to hear a couple of, I've been actively doing this for the past 10 years, so I'd love to share if we have time to do that.
I'd say really quickly.
So
you
yes.
have to say on script, but yes, I followed up, so yes.
Perfect. Okay, both undergraduates and graduates. One of the most successful community engagement opportunities that I've provided to students has to do with our undergraduate music education students, so pre-service teachers, working with, in this case, 4th graders. There are a number of projects. Let me focus on one. 4th graders. And what we have done over the last decade is to establish a way that we could facilitate meeting the requirements of the social studies curriculum within the 4th grade level. At this particular school, it happens to be studying the life of a Nobel Peace Prize winner. That's their social studies curriculum. And so the teacher's sole responsibility for the entire year is to select the individual upon whom they'll focus during the year. After that, the students, the 4th graders, take responsibility for doing research, deciding if we're going to tell the story of this person's life, what are the most important elements that we need to make sure make it into that story. And then we bring in a teaching artist, a director, who helps them storyboard that actual line, that narrative. At that point, they begin putting together lyrics. We don't talk about it this way yet, but that eventually becomes a libretto. And my undergraduate music education majors step in and facilitate the creation of music to set the libretto to music. And so what happens over the course of the next 2 or 3 months is now my students don't compose, it's the fourth graders who come up with the ideas, and my students capture those ideas and put them and kind of facilitate putting them together in meaningful ways. They create notation, the fourth graders practice those songs, and then at the end of the year they perform an opera, and opera in the loosest sense of the term, but a musical setting of the story for the entire school. So it's about learning, it's about collecting information, putting it together, but then it's also about disseminating that information to a broader audience. And this has become such an amazing part of the school culture that, of course, the third graders can't wait till next year because they get to do theirs. The fifth graders come back still singing songs from the opera that they created, and then we have high school students who come back every year still singing songs from their opera, and so it's been a wonderful experience. A crucial aspect of this was not a preordained program that I, as a researcher or a music educator, came to the school and said, here's what you should do to teach your social studies curriculum. We sat down with the fourth grade teaching team, all 4 teachers at that time. We talked about challenges that they were facing in their own curriculum and how to best engage students. And this evolved over a 10-year period from a real quick 3 or 4 week program to one that now lasts the entire year and provides amazing opportunities for our music. I mean, the fourth graders have a great experience. They own the opera. I mean, they really, every fiber of their being is invested in this. My students come away from it seeing how a music integration program can truly work. And so the idea of being able to take music, use it in other contexts, and see how it facilitates the engagement and the learning of students has been just really valuable. So we have people out in the field now who have not only read about music integration activities, but have experienced it firsthand. The most exciting part, and I'm getting ready to publish an article on this, the most exciting part was out of the half dozen students who have moved on through our program, having participated in this, 4 of the 6 have actually initiated during the first year or 2 of their own teaching, and you know what the first year of teaching is like, right? During the first year or 2 of their teaching, they have initiated their own music integration program within the school that where they're teaching. And so I think that's a huge sign of success for us.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right, and I am also slated to ask the second question.
All right.
How would you approach and lead a large and varied faculty comprised of academics, performers, lecturers, and tenure track? What are some of the challenges you have faced or envision facing in managing this kind of diverse faculty?
Yeah, I've had direct experience with that. This is the third year I've served as associate director, and as we did a national search for a director last year, I stepped into the role of interim director. We have 70 faculty members here. The vast majority are tenure track. We also have, I said vast majority, 2/3 of them are tenure track, 24 staff members, and so in a very highly complex environment. And to add to that, it was a rather contentious period. There had been a non-continuation of the former director, and so there were known challenges stepping into that role. And I have worked with exactly the populations that you've described. I think one of the strengths that I bring to a position like this is, although I do, if you look at my website and where I'm placed, I am considered a music education faculty member, and yet if you look at my profile, if you look at my background, I hardly fit the traditional notion of a music education individual. And so, in fact, I could go down the list of each of yours, from performance to jazz, African American music studies to music history. I can go through each of those and identify how I have had direct connection with each of those disciplines throughout the year. So I bring not only a knowledge and understanding of those things, but truly having engaged in almost each and every one of the areas. And so I suppose to get to your point about the very diverse faculty, not only disciplines but other perspectives, it's absolutely crucial in my view to be as collaborative and consultative a leader as possible. And so if you're looking for someone who's coming in I'll be glad to share with you my vision for what music should be, what we should be doing with our students. But I consider that my vision. And in order to establish our vision, we need to have a conversation about that. I need to understand better what your perspectives are. And so what individuals find about me from the very beginning is one of the greatest skills I bring is listening. I can sit and not say a thing and absorb. And I think that's an absolutely crucial aspect of a leader. I also was in a position where I had to make some very difficult decisions. And the process for me in decision making is open dialogue, identifying individuals who have a significant investment in the given, whatever the decision that needs to be made is focused on, and bringing them together, collecting as much information as possible, gathering as many perspectives as possible, and then being willing to make those decisions. Once you've made a decision, what I've found, perhaps Amherst is different. I've been practicing my pronunciation of Amherst too. There's no H,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the I think that it's really, maybe Amherst is different from Minnesota, and everyone gets along, and it's just a mecca of idyllic interactions. That has not been the case at the University of Minnesota, and so stepping into that position, it was really crucial that even those who felt disenfranchised had an opportunity to ensure that they knew that their voices were heard. And so as I made decisions, I found it incredibly important to follow up and simply say that I understand not everyone's going to be happy with that decision. Here is the rationale for my decision, and here's why I'm making it that way. No decision is set in stone, so let's come back to this 3 months from now, see where we are, and we can reconsider where we are. And I think that's the most important thing, is to ensure that each individual knows that their perspective is heard and valued, and then that's taken into account as decisions are made. I'm not at all naive. You're just not, at least here, you're not going to make everyone happy. But at the same time, as long as we gather around our core values, we have a strategic plan too, which is really crucial. And I'm impressed with the UMass strategic plan that's out there. And one of my questions will be undoubtedly what's happening at the department level with that to implement, to take a look at what the institution says and implement that into your own fiber.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we are in the process of redesigning our curriculum, and the undergraduate curriculum in particular. So the current version was probably instituted about 10 years ago. There's been a lot of time, a lot of demands on the student time that, we're trying to consider, and some schedule conflicts between the Gen Ed offerings and our regular music department offerings. So can you talk about some of the challenges and solutions you've faced in dealing with curriculum redesign?
Absolutely, and this is an area in which I have huge experience. In fact, in my transition from Northwestern University 10 years ago to Minnesota, you asked about undergraduate specifically. I need to kind of outline graduate first because that's how I started, but I'll come back to undergraduate. I was actually hired at a time, or responded to a job description at a time when the graduate program in music education at the University of Minnesota had been closed by the dean, to say, you guys need to really relook at the curriculum, you need to take time to review everything that's there and do a better job of recruitment and admissions, et cetera, et cetera. So this was before my arrival, and in fact they pulled in a review committee from around the nation that made a series of recommendations. One of their top recommendations was to hire a senior person to come in and facilitate this process. That's the position into which I was hired. And so I knew when I hit the ground that the expectation was to redesign the graduate programs. But what we decided to do, I was scheduled to start at the beginning of September. I arrived in July, and my colleagues and I actually began working significantly during August and we decided not just to do the graduate curriculum, we did both the undergraduate and the graduate curriculum. And what we did was we really swept everything off the table, said nothing is in stone in our curriculum. We want to produce the absolute best music educators that we can. And so we started at the very beginning. Within a 3-month period, we had completed both of those revision processes, sent it forward for approval, both at the school, college, and university level. It was approved, and we were matriculating students into that program the fall after my arrival here at the University of Minnesota. The other thing that we had done during that time, our music therapy program was in a shambles at the time, and during that first year, I made a case during a very complex fiscal period to search for a tenure track music therapy student. So I was able to make that case strongly. We found someone, and then so the second year I was here at Minnesota, we actually completed the exact same process, undergraduate and graduate curricula, completely revised for the music therapy programs under the auspice of a new faculty member who we hired during that first year. So you asked about the complexity in scheduling contests. So you mean your music majors don't have lots of elective space in their degree plans? Yeah.
No.
So one of the things that we constantly struggle with is exactly that. I think that the mentality, one of the primary issues that faces us in those contexts is the fact that we seem to have this mentality that everything we need to teach students has to be taught in a dedicated class. And so as we were going through this curricular revision process at the University of Minnesota, one of the things I kept coming back and stressing over and over is we don't need a class for that. We don't need a class for that. Here's how we can integrate that into our already offered courses. And so in music education, if you look at types of courses that are often included, sometimes there's almost always an intro to music education class. You have one of those. There is a psychology of music class, research in music education, history of music education courses. Music technology is another one that's often there, and that's one that I teach, actually. When I came here, they were surprised to hear me say, I don't think we should offer a music technology class, because that's not the best way to introduce the information students need. And in fact, what I found teaching that class is students would essentially say, okay, here's what I need to do to check off that requirement box. I'm done with my music technology. Now I can move on to the next topic. To avoid that, what we did was we actually decided what are the technologies that students most need: digital recording, videography, notation software, etc. And we found appropriate places within our curriculum, either our intro to music class, music education class, our techniques classes, which are the fingering classes that that's what we call ours, and then the methods classes, the pedagogical classes. And we took each of those and made assignments for the students that showed that they were able to utilize that technology effectively in a context that was directly related to the job that they'll be doing eventually. And so I think that we need to be much more creative. We are creative people. We need to apply this to our curricular thinking and be much more innovative and creative in the ways that we determine students need to fulfill their requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm
Sure.
up next with the question. We are fortunate we've had many new hires over the last 3 or 4 years into the tenure stream after a period where there wasn't much activity along those lines, but it's good now. Consequently, we're sort of having a little bit of a change in the shift of the demographics of the department. We have a lot of new young people in the tenure stream. Can you talk about your mentoring philosophy, your mentoring practice for this particular population, and how you would see them through to a successful conclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we have to focus on the 3 pillars that you're expected to fulfill. So it's not just about research. It's not just about teaching. It's not just about, and when I say research, of course, I mean research, creative activities, the whole gamut. And so the importance of really keeping on track in each of those areas. And dare I say, one of the things that I have done in my own advising, mentoring in these kind of contexts, the idea of ensuring that you are contributing in a means that meets your service expectation. But it's so easy to say yes 3 or 4 too many times in those contexts. We all want to help. And so what I've found one of the most crucial aspects of my own mentoring is ensuring that each individual is fulfilling their responsibility, but not being overwhelmed in a way that would negatively impact their teaching and research, because that's typically a higher percentage of their appointment. I've had experience both at the school level and then also one-on-one as a mentor, and so let me elaborate on that just a bit. I think it's actually crucial that each junior faculty member has someone to whom they can turn immediately with any question related to their advancement and future progress. And so what we have done, what we have taken into, we've put into practice here at the University of Minnesota, we actually assign a senior faculty member to new faculty when they're hired. And that's a very effective system, to the extent that the senior faculty member is invested, right? And there's a wide range. And so one of the things that we continue to have to do is to help develop even senior faculty in skills that they may not quite have developed yet. And so in those cases where faculty don't do well as a mentor, or they just don't see the importance of taking time, it's crucial to have a conversation with them and say, let them know how valuable their experience, their advice is for this individual, and help them through that process. So it's the worst thing you could do is just say, well, you didn't do as well as a mentor, we're not going to assign any more people to you. That lets them off the hook. And in fact, this is a part of their own service activity. And so I think it's very crucial to have that one-on-one connection. From a personal perspective, what I chose to do in the role of mentor, and I've now mentored two junior faculty here at the University of Minnesota, and this is the one-on-one. I was assigned to each of these individuals. We try to keep it one at a time during the period. What I chose to do was to meet biweekly. And what I would ask the individuals to do is to talk with me about anything that's happening in your teaching, any questions or concerns you have. Also, I'd like to see an updated list each time we meet about what's in the pipeline. In this case, with music educators and music therapy faculty members, it was typically publications, not so much the creative activity part. But the idea was, tell me what you've completed, tell me what's in the hopper, what do you conceive beyond that? So there's like a 3 to 5 year trajectory with the creative activities, and you're moving forward in that as well. And so this was wonderful. And it was always informal, over coffee or lunch or something like that. And it was just a conversation, but an opportunity for these individuals, one male and one female in my case, to really know that they could come with any question. They could ask anything. Nothing was off the table. But the idea that they could ask anything. And sometimes they would see that I didn't necessarily have an answer immediately, but I would know where to go and I could help them find the answers.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Can you describe a difficult leadership situation you've experienced and how you've resolved it, and also what you learned from it?
Oh, sure. Probably one of I had some really wonderful leadership experiences during my time as interim director. One of the most challenging involved a staff member, and I'll be very careful because, of course, there are confidentiality issues, but this was truly one of the most difficult situations, and it was a situation in which a particular staff member in a supervisory capacity had gone for several years without providing appropriate feedback and evaluations of staff under his or her supervision, okay? There were also some other issues, some lack of clarity in communications, time management issues, and this had been allowed to go on for about 4 or 5 years, and there had been no action taken. And so when I stepped into the role, within a month of stepping into the role, I went back and reviewed all of the previous documentation related to this. There was a performance improvement plan in place for this particular individual, and there were 4 items on that list, none of which had really been resolved. And so the first meeting that we had was for me to express my concerns, for me to share my knowledge of the past documentation and say, this is what I understand are the areas in which improvement is expected. What can I do to help you do that? And so we had a conversation about that, and I actually paid not thousands, but a significant amount of money to allow him to meet with a consultant for about a 4-month period of time with the expectation that the types of skills, organizational skills, time management, clarity in communications, would be resolved. Of course, the expectation for evaluations was a no-brainer. That was like, this is unacceptable. Within 2 weeks, I expect an evaluation to be done, and a complete and thorough evaluation. Interestingly, the staff member who was most vocal about not receiving the evaluations, when one was actually submitted, he came to me and said, this was a really good evaluation. I mean, I don't agree with everything that my supervisor said, but this is a really good evaluation. And so through that process of really working with this individual and helping him in every way that I could, we did get some good benefits. Now, the most difficult part was that it became readily apparent that even after my reiterating the performance improvement plan items, that essential progress was not being made. And so it came to a point, and this is an individual with whom I shared holiday meals, and so it was a friend, but I knew that in the best interest of the School of Music, the job that was required was not being done. And so eventually I had to let that person go. But before doing that, I made every effort to provide support, to facilitate development of the skills that were needed, and then only after it was readily apparent that that was not going to be improved did I make the difficult move to say, here's a termination contract of your contract.
Could I just ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
It sounds like you must not have a unionized faculty if that was your decision.
We don't have a unionized faculty, although those conversations are ongoing right now, and this is going to be a vote probably within 2 or 3 months.
Okay, thanks.
We don't have a unionized faculty. We do have unionized staff at various levels, but the faculty are not.
Yeah, we have both. We have quite a few unions on campus, but
Yep.
that's another conversation.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm up next, and it has to do with vision. And I think that you've maybe through answering some of the other questions you've touched on certain things, but share your thoughts, please, with us about your vision for our department as you can see where we are.
Sure. One of the things that I am most interested in whenever I look at another institution's website, and I've been doing some of this earlier today, just kind of going through the various degree plans and looking at the courses that are required, and I'm always just fascinated how we do things similarly and yet in a slightly different way. And I think I came away, I didn't get through them all, but I've looked at a good number of the programs, and it appears to me, I could look at our website and say the same thing, but it appears to me that largely the curricula that are represented on the at least online where I could see them are largely traditional kinds of programs. So you got your theory, you got your ear training, history, ensemble performance, private lessons, and then depending on your concentration, composition lessons or applied lessons or music theory classes, music education classes. And so for me, as I look at that, and again, let me reiterate, I could say the same thing about our programs, even after having done the curricular revision. It's not until you look inside the classes that you begin to see where the differences occur. I guess one of the things that I would love to know is that students are getting the exact kind of experiences that will ensure they can succeed in their chosen profession after they get out. And so in addition to those core content areas, the music core, ensemble experience, etc., that in fact there are numerous opportunities, not just one class, but numerous opportunities for them to exercise their ability to network, to meet people, to make performance events happen, not to participate in an ensemble that's already scheduled, performs in the orchestra, in the orchestra hall, and everyone else takes care of the arrangements, but to actually have the experience of doing that for oneself, which involves not only entrepreneurial skills, it involves organizational skills, financial management, budgeting, those kinds of things, and engagement with the community. And again, what we're doing here is encouraging more and more students to do their recitals outside of the School of Music, so that they need to establish their own location for the space. They make connections. They determine who is the appropriate audience for the performance that I plan, and how do I make this happen. And boy, that's an incredible learning experience. We're also being much more insistent that students not just play, but that they actually engage with the audience during the performance. Share with them information about the piece or something that's meaningful to them, but making a direct connection with the audience beyond just performing music for them. And so again, community engagement, with the definition of engagement being multi-tiered. Engaging directly, but also the ability to communicate with those who know less about music with you, using language that can be easily understood. And a kid's concert can be the best test of that. Can I really explain the music that I'm performing?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the university has a broad commitment to diversity issues,
Yes.
and just wondered how you would feel your work would address this commitment.
Yeah. There's nothing I can do about my own my own categorization, but I have been a proactive, in all of my capacities, a proactive supporter and initiator of exactly the importance of that. And I think on your website, both in the strategic plan and just in general, many places, the commitment to diversity and inclusion is just readily, it's everywhere. I hope that's true. I mean, I really hope it's true. We struggle with that here at the University of Minnesota as we look around the city, Minneapolis in particular. It's such an incredibly diverse area, and then you look across our student body and maybe even more so in our faculty body, and it hardly represents that. And so we're making we're taking direct action to address that, because we believe, and I truly believe, that the educational experiences we provide for students are only as good as the diversity of ranges of thought and engagement that occur in those classes are. The more diverse population of students you have, the more diverse population of faculty members you have, the absolute better that you're going to present the information. There's just no question as far as I'm concerned about that. So let me answer specifically, what have I done to do that? I'm currently, I feel your pain. I'm chairing a search committee myself right now for our director of bands position. And from the very beginning of that process, I asked that and they always, our EOAA office always sends out a page that we're all expected to read, and I really wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to say, this is important to me, and given the lack of diversity, not complete lack, but the minimal diversity within our school, I think it's important that we do this. And as you're probably aware, director of bands across the nation are primarily white male. It's just dominated by white males. And so one of the most important things to me was that we, A, attract a highly diverse pool of candidates, and B, that we really take that seriously as one of our content. It wasn't in the preferred or required qualifications, but it's important to us as an institution. And so we actually agreed at the beginning that one of the committee members would continue to raise this issue each time we discussed a candidate. They would continue keeping this in their mind. My intent was just to ensure that one person was constantly bringing this up. But the fascinating thing that happened was, after one or two times, I believe every member of the committee, somewhere along the way, expressed concern related to whether we were being inclusive in our in the semifinalist and then the finalist pool. So to skip ahead, I won't belabor the point. We actually have finalists coming to campus. Three of the four actually are outside the white male, white American category, and I think that speaks volumes to the effort, the idea of keeping it in mind, making sure it's on the front burner as we make these decisions. So that's a faculty-related perspective. In the student perspective, that presents incredible challenge. I don't have to tell you, it presents incredible challenges for us, because at the University of Minnesota, I can tell you that if a student hasn't started an instrument by the 5th, maybe 6th grade at the very latest, been able to afford an instrument, either to rent or to own, and taken private lessons from middle school on, they're not going to be competitive for the audition. And so we have done a couple of things there too. We actually created a Bachelor of Arts. I was glad to see the Bachelor of Arts option in your program. And in our specifically BA program, we actually took away the audition component completely. And the purpose was, we have two, a Bachelor of Arts applied, the audition still stands there, Bachelor of Arts academic, which would potentially lead someone into a field of a graduate study in theory or musicology. There's still a performance expectation, but it doesn't need to be traditional wind band instrument or orchestral instrument. It can be anything. It could be a turntablist. It could be a lead guitarist. And they are required, the advisor of the student is required to attend performances that the student is involved in during their school, and to check off basically saying, I have observed their performances it's at a high level, and they just play a different style of music than what we provide in our ensembles. And so we have actually allowed a doorway into the School of Music that didn't exist before for a population of students that didn't have a means to get in. Long-term solution, I think we need to impact schools in our regions more impactfully. We need to get in there and have our undergraduate students working with beginning instrumentalists. It's a good experience for our undergraduate music ed students. It's a great experience for the elementary school students, and really do everything that we can to ensure that even those who can't afford the instrument or can't afford the private lessons are able to get instruction that will help them be more competitive when that time comes. And so I think this is a long-term solution that's going to take a lot of thought, but the solution is not just to begin working at high school. It's too late by that time. And so there's a lot of strategic thinking that needs to go on to figure out a solution.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. What sorts of questions do you have for us that you'd like to ask?
Oh, terrific. I guess one thing I'm curious about, there's such a commitment, as I said earlier, to the idea of what I call community engagement. I try to avoid the word outreach as much as possible, but the engagement aspect, maybe service learning is a better approach. Are there instances that you can share with me where that kind of activity is going on within the department or within the curriculum even?
I think that I don't think that there is a broad commitment currently from the department in that regard. But I do feel that there is general support for the idea. It just it's not been a part of our culture here, at least recently. I mean, Nadine's been here longer than any of us, and so she could speak to what maybe happened in the past, but I don't know how relevant it is, frankly. I mean, I think the short answer is that it's an area that we could definitely improve in. And being close to Springfield, Massachusetts, and Holyoke, Massachusetts, there are ample opportunities, but one doesn't have to go much further than our own backyard, frankly, to get more involved in outreach. And so I think it's a growth area. We would look forward to new energy in that regard.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, Amherst is a very small city, so I think logistically getting down to Springfield and Holyoke has been tough. You know, how to get those students up here, it's a massive undertaking of busing, and how are our students going to get all the way down there? So that's I think a problem.
Yeah. One of the things that we did is we created a very minimal. It's funny how much you can accomplish with just little tiny amounts of appropriately placed funds. And so we did a little fundraising and had about $40,000 that we were able to put together into a package to allow graduate students, faculty, and others to write. It started off at $500 was the maximum you could ask for. We've gone up to $750 now, but they're little mini grants, and you propose a project that involves community engagement, and there's an expectation we'll get a report at the end, and there has to be assessment of some kind so that we know that it's succeeded and what your intent was. But we've generated about 25, 35, 40 amazing projects by doing that, and it's just by kind of making these funds available. So in that case, a student could have accommodations, travel costs covered with a very small grant. Yeah, sorry, Brent.
I was going to add to that. That's a very good idea, and UMass does a fair amount of that sort of incentivizing for community engagement because it's a priority. They announce grants. I think what happens is that there's a sort of a disconnect between the school mission, and then when it gets down to the department level, there has to be a liaison between the school and then where this actually hits the ground, because I think the faculty they're in the middle of their tenure responsibilities and they're just busy. And I think of all the faculty, the music education area is doing the most. They report that they do their outreach often comes through the form community engagement is through teaching, so that they'll have a session where they have Springfield teachers come in for like 2 days of workshop and professional development, and it's volunteer based, and I'm sure it's a service thing that they do. But they also are very interested in having their students, they're the students, the music ed students are the ones that go out and engage with the schools. It's just part of what they do.
Sure.
But I think that in order to make that more robust, I think a lot of us would like to do more, but it's almost we need almost someone to lead the way, just within the department, just to say, I guess I think what would have to happen is there would have to be very clear expectations or clear guidelines written for how this constitutes professional activity, meaning where it's like, oh, that's a great idea, I'm not going to do that grant thing. But if it was more like, yes, this is actually going to count towards promotion tenure or something like that, then I think that would be more of a, more people signing on.
Very insightful. I mean, that's exactly where the rubber hits the road. If it's not valued in the tenure promotion process, then it doesn't happen. And so we've made some significant changes here as a result of that, and we do take it seriously as part of that. That doesn't mean that you can never publish a peer-reviewed journal article, but it means that as part of what you're accomplishing, it can certainly be an important part of the consideration. Do I have time for another?
Oh, sure, please.
I noticed that, of course, I take very seriously the idea of being chair of a department of music and dance. So I was intrigued to see the list of search committee members, and no one from dance is on it. So I guess one thing I'd be curious to know is if there were a dance person here, or if that perspective were brought, are there questions or concerns directly related to that part of our department that I should be aware of?
Yes, the dance program is not really large. It has 4 faculty, 2 of them are tenure track.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some discussion that they might potentially move over to the theater department because of all the established cooperation that they have there. And at the moment, that appears not to be on the table right now, although there's some possibility that this discussion may continue. And so at the time that this committee was appointed, because of that discussion, no one from the dance program was included here. But we've kept them in the loop, and now that we know they are remaining in this department, they will have an opportunity to meet with all of the on-campus people.
Great.
Both the dean and I have assured them that we'll be in communication with them. So
Great.
it's not actually, it's not indicative of any problem, just a transition that didn't quite complete itself at the time that this committee started.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Also, to let you know what's going on is that the members of the dance faculty are being more. I mean, someone had to reach out, and they are doing much more to be invested in the day-to-day runnings of the department. So, as membership on the personnel committee, I mean, for years that didn't happen. I think that historically there was a sort of a question: how do the two portions of the music and dance department come together? But there is actually. You'll meet members of the dance. Well, I mean, I don't know. People who come to campus for
the
interviews.
people who come to campus, yes, right.
Will be in a meeting with the full faculty members from both sides, and it's basically an issue that, however it resolves, whether them transferring over to another department or staying here, would be sort of an opportunity to go forward and sort of make the connections more clear. But at present, it has been sort of a question as to how we go
one of the
together.
biggest problems is that their building is clear across campus.
Yeah.
So we're nowhere near each other, and so for them to even get over here for meetings and they usually have classes at those times, so it's just very, very difficult for them to do it. But
Yep.
they are definitely invested.
It's difficult, but it's doable.
Yeah.
That's so. I've got. If I do one more, if I combine a couple into one more question, may I ask one more? What would you say are the 1 or 2 biggest challenges that the person stepping into this position is likely to face? And this is the second part. If you look ahead 3 to 5 years, how will you know that this committee made the right recommendation down the road?
I think it's difficult to talk about our department without talking about our facilities. The facility, the building that we inhabit, in any kind of focus faculty retreats that we've conducted in the last 5-6 years, and when that information is kind of broken down and reassembled, that it kind of comes back to the building. It's difficult to recruit when the students come into certain parts of our building, especially when they're compared to our competitors in the region. We're hamstrung in certain ways by our building. We're way too small. I mean, the building is too small for us. We're bursting at the seams. And so my own personal perspective is that the building is a challenge that needs to be resolved. And there are other ideas on that. And I guess to answer the second part of your question, I would hope that the person coming into the job, the signs that I would like to see in 5 years, are they doing a good job at addressing the building? I think, frankly, given the downturn in funding that we're experiencing, I think that in 5 years, what I would hope that the person would have accomplished was that when the administration is starting to talk about, and meaning the larger administration in
Right.
Boston, is beginning to talk about maybe it's time that we can start to think about some new projects on the campus, that the music, whatever that building is, whatever that looks like, is at the beginning of that conversation. So I think that it's a conversation that starts right now and continues for 5 years, and then when they're ready to open up the purse strings, it's the music building that comes into the discussion.
Yep. That's helpful. Thank you.
That's I'll jump in too. I don't even know what my answer is going to be. I think if you asked every member of the committee, you'd get a different answer. I think that what is desired is, I guess, a sense that that the person who is in position as chair is a strong advocate for the department and is able to. I mean, this is a paraphrase on what Bill just said, but it's basically that there's evidence that our department has a voice and is being really supported by the college and the university, and that comes in many forms. I mean, that comes in sort of just their awareness of what we do, but also sort of this the feeling that there's partnership, which is not to say that doesn't exist now. It certainly
Right.
does. We've reported that we've had actually in the last 10 years a real upsurge in the assembling of the faculty. There have been some incredible investments by the college in the faculty and also in the resources, actually, not in the building facilities, but in instrument upkeep budgets. And there have been some major changes. We had a new marching band building. And there's been a lot of positive developments, and we've come a long way. I think what we would feel is that that's continuing in that at the same time that we're all, I guess, in it together with a department chair who is, I guess, a dynamic person who has basically is leading the department. So that would feel like we were on an upward trajectory and working together in that regard.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
I'll tell you now, we are sort of at the beginning of this process of Skyping the first group. We hope to be done within the next week to 10 days. Our process involves a lot of memo writing, which is why I'm here. And so I have to write memos to go to the dean's office and to our office for equal opportunity and diversity. And they have to approve those, the group that we propose for campus visits.
Like a pool.
Yes. And we have no control over how quickly or how slowly they may respond. And although I think I enjoy a reputation for being kind of a pushy kind of person with respect to process, I can't control it. So that is a little bit unclear, the timing of that portion. I'm hopeful that we'll be done with this and have all of our process done somewhere in the first half of March.
Great.
And maybe that's too optimistic, but I'm hanging on.
Okay. That's helpful. Let me, if I may take just a second to follow up on the final comments that were made. I currently operate within a college that has 31 departments. If I did my numbers right, I think there are 14 in humanities and fine arts. And I was able to advocate extremely successfully for our school within that constellation. At the University of Minnesota, the School of Music is one of the larger departments in the college. That helps, of course, but that's really important. And the other thing that I really came to a realization is that I actually enjoy, it's not really fundraising, it's relationship development, but that over the course of my time as interim director was able to raise $1.2 million, again, during a very contentious time in the community. And so I would look forward to that, and I bring a wonderful partner. My wife is a great fundraiser, too, so we're a good team. We're a good team to help with that.
Great. That's
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very
Best of
Bye-bye.
best of luck with the
Bye-bye.
search. Bye.